Hello everyone, thank you for joining us here. So today we are going to talk about experimental reports in computing sciences. Probably most of you know about experimental reports since we dealt with them in methodologies courses. And obviously we all have an idea about informatics or what we call computing sciences. But matching them in one topic is the aim of this video. So, experimental reports are the most frequent kinds of documents written in informatics classes, and we can count for as much as 25% of the course. Yet little time, more attention is devoted to how to write them well. Worse yet, each professor wants something as little different, regardless of variations. However, the goal of experimental reports remains the same. Document your findings, communicate their significance, and to demonstrate your understanding of the science that you have studied and practice it by writing about in an experimental report. The general purpose is to give you practice at writing professional reports for your future career in informatics, where the ultimate aim is to publish your research findings in order to share them with the computing scientific community. Well, as you can see, we have divided our work into 5 parts. The first part deals with the definitions of concepts. Obviously, these concepts are experimentations and informatics. We did that to have an idea about the basic theories that have been done in both concepts in order to relate between them in our work. And seeing that we cannot relate both concepts without talking about their shared history, we felt the necessity of referencing to the emergence of informatics and experimentation and its development, and that is what we have done in the second part of the work. The third piece of the work deals with answering the most important question of this work, which is how to write an experimentary report in computing sciences. And here we talked about the typical component of experimental reports. Then, because the case of our study is the students of computing department, we put this in consideration, and this is why we decided to highlight the issues that they found when writing their experimental reports. In a part titled "The Major Challenges Found by Computing Students When Writing an Experimental Report." In an attempt to help these students, we have done many researches and we end up with a list of the characteristics of a good reporter writer, and we illustrated it in the fifth part of the work, which is experimental report style. So let's get to start with our abstract. Computational thinking has been recognized as a collection of understandings and skills required for new generations of students, not only proficient at using tools, but also at creating them and understanding the implication of their capacities and limitations. Maybe a lot of you doesn't know this, but experimental reports are something new in the Department of Computing Sciences. Maybe they used to deal with writing mathematical reports, with doing projects, but during experimental reports is something new in computing sciences. This is why a lot of questions have been asked and a lot of theories have been emerged in order to answer these questions. The main questions are: what does it mean to do experiments in informatics? Does it make sense to import traditional principles of experimentation from classical disciplines into the field of computing and information processing? And finally, how experiments should be documented. Well, since we said that the first thing to deal with in this project was to gather some definitions of the concepts, let's get a view to the first concept, which is informatics. As you can see, informatics emerged in the 20th century as the field that underlies all the uses of computing and information technology. To explain this, We refer to the to its many origins. Informatics is often described both as a science and an engineering discipline. I know, weird. But what if I told you this too? Due to its far-reaching implications for understanding the natural phenomena and system, informatics is sometimes even called a natural science. Also, due to its emphasis in the construction of computational artifacts like software, informatics is sometimes called a technical design science as well. So, as a consequence, the scientific methodologies of informatics have varied origins as well and are not always uniquely defined or understood. It's kinda important here, guys, because I'm going to show you one of the first methodologies that have been done to relate experimentation and informatics. As you see in the paper, empirical methods and experimentation have been part of informatics for many years. In fact, already in 1967, one of the founding fathers of the discipline, the American George Forsyth, pointed that computer science is to be valued both as a theoretical and an experimental science, using the analogy with physics. He wrote, whether one is primarily interested in understanding or in design, the conclusion is that good experimental work in computer science must be rated very high indeed. But with great foresight, he also noted that computer science is in part a young deductive science, in part a young experimental science, and in a part a new field of engineering design. Because of this broad sweep of activity, the nature of computer science is usually misunderstood and deprecated by those with an acquaintance, however, close to only one aspect of computing. In a nutshell, this explains the complexity of the methodological landscape in the field of informatics. Many different concerns have developed and influenced by sociological factors, so they developed simultaneously, and in such as the development of the field has been influenced by sociological factors, the interest for experimentation has varied greatly over the year and per subdiscipline, with experimentation currently gaining recognition in the field at large. The principles of experimentation should be well understood in the discipline. So, in this paper, we highlighted both the philosophy and some concrete ramification of the experimental method in computer science.